Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. My, oh my, Tyler Gould, that is an episode.
Mike Freeman, what a night tonight on the Richest Men in Town. I think I say this a lot. It's an adventure, but I feel like sometimes I'm holding on to the edge of my seat. Like, where is this going, man? And it was
So you have history with Clint Watkins. He's our guest. That history kind of gets you thinking he might be cut from the same richest men in town cloth. What about Clint Watkins made you think he could answer a few of our questions?
Well, we've known each other for a long time. We were companions as missionaries years and years and years ago, and spent a long time together as companions, as a matter of fact. But I think knowing Clint, what he's gone through as an adult married man, really is where I felt like Clint had some things to say that maybe people needed to hear.
And how he says it, right? I mean, I think that the experiences that he has growing up, I mean, our listeners are going to be in for an incredible, authentic, humble experience tonight as Clint kind of walks us through highs and lows. And the things that the lows teach us.
Yeah, I loved how he talked about sort of his journey with faith and looking back and recognizing how active God's been in his life, that maybe he didn't realize it at the time. I love that lesson. It resonated for me. And really, it was a big part of the notes that I took tonight, is just, wanting to be more mindful of looking in my rearview mirror and seeing how things have been taken care of for me,
Yeah, and I'm about to say something that people might think is, oh, there goes Mike Freeman contradicting himself, right? Like, I understand that mistakes are made and we learn from those. I'm okay with failure. But when it comes to the big picture in life, it's incredible what somebody can accomplish when failure is not an option. When that person is looking at this Goliath of a situation and the resolve, the voice, right? The thing that they're telling themselves is, there's no out here.
Yeah.
Right.
I love how he kept talking about, when he was faced with those big moments and he was unsure of what he should do. There was two things he kept saying was, one, I knew I had to find a different way. And then he always said, he mentioned multiple times, I felt like I was guided at that moment. And I love the insight, right? That, and when he says find a different way, he kept referring to, but it's not given to you. You gotta search for it.
Because find a different way might be the title of the episode, but we could easily have gone with that other, right? That idea of don't expect it given to you.
Yeah, right. I think that's just as equal, right?
What are you doing? What are you doing on your part, right? And just that hunger and the grit and the grind that is Clint Watkins. You can feel it as he's talking about, like, I'm a vet and I'm doing it. Maybe I'm doing it a different way. And that different way is I'm building something pretty amazing. It's taking 80, 90 hours a week, but I'm in, right? And he says, when I do something, I'm either doing it or riding it into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It's pretty phenomenal stuff. And look, and at the end of the day, we did get a veterinarian to admit to one of the biggest mysteries.
Don't give it away.
No, you have to listen
Yeah.
to hear that answer. But Clint shed some lights on one of life's biggest questions.
One of life's biggest questions. To our listeners, if you feel like you are at your limit, listen to Clint.
Amen.
If you feel like you can't, listen to Clint, right? There's a couple points where through tears, whether they're his tears or our tears, it was about, now you can, right? You can. I will echo this. You cannot if you're trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
That's the town.
That's it.
That's the town. And that's what this is about. And that's the tribe. And he gets into some things. In his lowest moments, he was never alone. He was actually provided people. And he acknowledges the hand of God giving him people. And one of those just happens to be my good friend and co-host, Tyler Gould. So, Tyler, thank you for connecting me with Clint. Thank you for connecting our listeners to Clint. Clint Watkins, Elena, just keep going, man. You just keep going. Clint, thank you for the way you showed up for our listeners. Do something with it. We're not quitting. We're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to do and follow Clint's lead. To our listeners, thank you for your support. We're heading on to the next 50. This is good times. Enjoy your time with Clint Watkins on The Richest Men in Town.
Clint was sort of big timing me the other night with his baseball games, you know. So
hey, the kid better have won the game, right?
They did. They won both. See, here's in my defense, he wasn't supposed to have a game. There was a postponed game from a previous week, and then there was supposed to be a game on Friday, and it's supposed to rain. So they just decided to make a double header last night at the spur of the moment, and so that's where I was.
Well, Let me tell you, it was a card well played because we're the richest men in town, right? And we talk about getting our priorities right. And then you got a kids baseball game. I mean, how are we gonna overrule that?
Exactly. You can't.
Clint goes family time on me, and I'm trying to convince him to bail on his son's baseball game. I'm like, dude, just bail on your son, man. Come on the show. That's funny, man.
Hold on, Clint. I'm just trying to break down the space behind you or the space that you are in. Like, what am I seeing? There's a pole?
That is. This is my office. So I don't actually come down here too much at the moment because my little brother stays here part-time. So this is kind of his room at the moment. But this is kind of my room, my nerd room. I'm at heart, I'm a giant nerd. I mean, I like athletics. I like sports. I like a bunch of things, which you'll find out. But so I have a fascination with 80s toys. And so I collect them.
Okay.
So that's what those shelves are.
Hey, Tyler, here's the problem. I talk a lot, right? I don't know if I've ever told you my G.I. Joe story.
No, but I love G.I. Joe. Go for it.
Yeah. So I was raised by a single mom, bless her heart. She was working one night. She worked the 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. shift. Can you imagine raising two teenage kids and you're not around between 12 and 9?
No, but as a teenager, you're like, sweet.
Crazy. Yeah.
So we had this it was like a bowl with a lid on it right in the middle of our table, right? And it was just like one day we're messing around or whatever, and we just happened to lift up the lid. Cash.
Whoa.
Big time cash. More cash than me or my little brother. Happy birthday, little brother. More than we'd ever seen, right? And immediately we think, it's G.I. Joe time, brother. Let's go.
Oh, no.
We reach in, grab the cash, and we go proceed to clear the shelf. And we buy every G.I. Joe they got.
Dude.
Oh,
And we're out there playing. We're out there playing in the sticks, right? We got a war going on, G.I. Joes and Cobra, right? All of that. And my mom comes home.
Oh no.
And we can hear her, right? She comes home and we can hear an audible, the whole neighborhood could hear her screaming our names.
Oh boy.
oh no.
That's decision time right there. It's like, do you run into the woods or you go to the house? Like
We're
that's
proceeding to have the best day of our lives, right?
right.
Up to that moment, it was the best day of our lives. And
Yeah.
then we realized that's where she kept the rent money,
Oh.
right?
It's interesting. I have
Oh
a
no,
very
it gets better. It gets better.
Oh, does it?
Right? When you're like 11 or 12 years old, you don't keep the receipt they give you.
Oh, and you
No,
rip
no, you
those
don't.
package opens, man.
You rip them open.
I'm 46. I don't keep receipts. You know what I mean?
Mom, I'm sorry. I'm still apologizing for that one. That was brutal.
I have a similar story. I was about a similar age. I was 8. Well, probably not 8, probably 7. I single mom as well. My sister and I. We were living in Houston, Texas. We were super poor, and there's a whole story goes with that. But I did a similar thing. I found probably not as much money, but I had found my mom's stash of quarters, and she used those quarters and she had them stay saved up for laundry and doing other things. And we didn't have any money for anything else. And I found those things, and I kind of did the same thing. I went to the arcade, and I had the best day of my life because we're old and they used to have arcades.
I love
and
those.
I bought candy, and I was living the life until I got home, and then that life ended. And still this day, I think that's the only time. My mother was never into any kind of capital punishment at all, but that day I got spanked, and it was well deserved. And I still feel bad about that to this day because we didn't have anything. We didn't even have food. I mean, we were eating government cheese and peanut butter, and that was about it. And so
yeah.
But as a kid, you just don't realize that.
Yeah. Tip our hats to single folks out there trying to do it, right? Not easy, but could you paint a better day than an arcade with a full roll of quarters?
I couldn't.
I mean, honestly, to this day, like
Forget
right now,
about it.
if you gave me a roll of quarters and there was an arcade, I would go party like crazy, dude. Honestly, I know.
Oh yeah,
Sign me up, man.
They got that nickel arcade out there in Utah every day, every day.
Man.
Like, hey, are you open during the COVID pandemic? Yep, we are. Oh, you keep it clean. Of course you keep.
Yeah,
those
of course you
machines
do.
clean.
Those machines are obviously wiped down, dude. So you know what's crazy is the other day I was getting ready to email Clint the pre-show document, and I said, man, I can't find your email address. What's your email? And he says, oh, it's Dr. Watkins at whatever. And I'm like, interesting. Like, yeah. I'm sure I thought there'd be like something like bubblegum123 at Yahoo. And he goes Dr. Watkins on
that. That's my work email. That's the one that I use now.
I love it, man.
I still have an old Hotmail account, so I still got that one, but I don't use it much.
So
that's a good thing, because the other day at work, someone said, "Here's my email address," and it was a Hotmail account. I'm like, I don't trust this guy.
So Tyler, did you feel old when you were sending that email to your friend at Dr. Watkins? Did you feel like all of a sudden, like maybe did you feel mature and grown up?
No, I felt like maybe he was pulling a prank on me. That's what I thought. No, look, I know Clint's a vet, right? He's a vet, and he is. How long have you been doing that now? And had your own? You have your own practice, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I graduated from vet school in 2005.
Okay.
And I started my own practice at the end of 2006.
Oh wow, that was
so
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, a little quicker than what I had planned on doing, but just everything kind of fell into place, and I decided to do it. Then we were in one location, and then after about 3 years in a rented location, we moved and bought a building, and we've been in there ever since.
That's awesome.
Okay. Really quick though. I mean, yeah, we can talk about your life as a vet, but
career
can I just get into? Can I do some psychoanalysis on the '80s toys? Why?
Absolutely.
Why the '80s toys?
Well, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit. When I was growing up, from the time that my parents got divorced when I was 5, and that was pretty rough time. Not for the divorce, I really don't remember very much of that. But my younger sister and I went with my mom, and my older brother went with my dad. Ooh. And my parents, you have to keep it in mind, they got married very young. I don't want to say how young. I don't want to spill their dirty laundry, but very young. My mom came from a pretty bad home. And so she didn't even have a high school diploma. She had gotten her GED, but she set out on her own with 2 kids, no education, trying to make it, right? And so we moved to Houston. We moved a lot of places first, all over California to Oregon, to Houston, because she heard there were jobs in Houston. And there probably were about 2 or 3 years before we got there, before the oil bubble burst at that time. And so there were no jobs, no family there. And so she kind of landed in a spot where she couldn't get out. She had no money to get back. I mean, we were stuck. One way
trip.
Yeah. And so here she is. And so we didn't have anything. And when I mean anything, I mean, we're probably skipping ahead a little, but there were times we were homeless. There were times when my sister and I were in foster care, a lot of things. So when I was growing up, I just didn't have anything. All right. Until now, my mom met my stepdad and she remarried. And so from about the time I was 10, 11 on, it wasn't too bad. But I think that's where a lot of that comes from, is that nostalgia, getting things I couldn't get when I was a kid that other kids had. So I think it's kind of what drives a lot of people.
Yeah. For me, it's the sneaks, the shoes. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Kids would be like rocking the shoes, and I'm rocking. But this was back when Puma wasn't cool, right?
Yeah.
And ponies weren't cool.
No, they were not.
And I remember I would get excited when the Big Five ads would come out, and I could go get shoes for like $29. And then it's just like, you start get your own money and you can start doing some things. But yeah, I mean, you just went without, and now almost like subconsciously, like you were saying, I don't go without, and my kids definitely don't go without. Right?
Exactly.
My mom would go with the worst cereal, right? The worst cereal. And then what she would do is she'd have 3 boxes of just the worst cereal. And as you're getting lower, she'd go goulash style on you and combine all of them.
Goulash cereal.
And as I'm doing this, as I'm going through this, I'm like, okay, never. Subconsciously, I'm writing the script. Never am I going to put my kids through this. I love it now. I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way. But that's just kind of how the script gets written. And now, you open up my pantry, it's Lucky Charms, it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, it's all the crap and garbage that I only got at Christmas time.
Mike, how many
Yeah.
times have you told your kids a story about goulash cereal?
Yeah, I don't hold that over their heads, but they do know when I die, they'll know that I stand wholeheartedly against all things goulash.
It's so funny you say goulash because I remember growing up too, like, we didn't have a lot of money either. And I just remember goulash was a thing, it's like,
Yeah.
and now, like, at the time I hated it as a kid. I thought it was the most disgusting thing ever. But now I realize it was just everything that was in the fridge. They were dumping in a pot and stirring it together, man.
Oh, you knew when it got lima bean.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you knew it was bad.
Yeah.
It was
We were
bad.
at the end of the month. Man.
Hey, brother, there's lima beans in the goulash.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's too funny.
Oh.
But hey, beans were always better the second day. Those navy beans, with the ham hock in it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Always a little thicker the second day.
I can't eat that at all. Today, I
okay.
won't eat it, man.
Hey, full disclosure, Mom, if you're listening, while she was gone, we would whittle down that leftovers by just throwing stuff out.
Oh yeah, every kid.
Because a pot of beans will last a week, and it's like, no, that cannot happen.
And Mom, we were really hungry while you were at work. We ate about 5 bowls apiece of those beans. So
yeah, we were watching Double Dare eating navy beans.
That's too funny.
But hey, before we get too far down the road here, Tyler, talk to me about why we love this guy.
I mean, look, you've known him for how long? 5 minutes. I mean,
exactly.
What's not to love about Clint? Clint, how long were we roommates? 6 months.
We were 6 or 7. I was trying to think of that the other day. I know it was really long.
Yeah,
I think it was
long.
6.
Yeah,
but it might have been 7. It was a long time.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
It was enough for Clint to need 20-some years to be able to get back on the phone with me, man.
Yeah, that's it. No, I mean, it was unusual in that mission to be together that long.
Oh, in a big way. So Clint and I served together in the Columbus, Ohio mission. The Columbus. Ohio mission. Yeah, that's absolutely. Right. For the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And
so let's put that in perspective. 6 months of a 2-year mission is a chunk.
It is.
And it could have been 7. I think it was definitely pushing.
Yeah. I was almost thinking it was 7, but
yeah,
it was a long time.
It was a long time. So we served in Nurk.
Yep. Nurk, Ohio.
But we were there.
We're
together
huge
for
in
6
Nurk,
months.
by the way. We're
huge in Nurk. We had a big
I was
following.
just looking at the stats. Nurk blows up every.
The downloads are off the charts, man. But yeah, we did. We were 6 months together, and Clint was my last companion. So I went home from serving with Clint. So, it was fun. I loved serving with Clint. We had a good time together. I enjoyed him, and we still keep in touch. I mean, we've kept in touch this whole time, and we send emails, shoot texts, and a call now and again. He's come out to San Diego and with his family, and just it's funny. I don't know. It's like you serve with a lot of different people, and you got people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and there's people that I still am in touch with, but Clint is for some reason we're just connected, man. I can't explain it, Clint.
So hey, Clint, when this roommate of yours reaches out and says, "Hey, I got this podcast, right, called The Richest Men in Town," and it's got your name written all over. What thoughts go through your head?
Well, I've been kind of watching it from when you guys started it, so I knew what it was kind of about.
You've been watching our meteoric rise.
Yes, I have.
It's been impressive.
And world domination, right?
Exactly. It's close.
Very close.
Very close. No, my first thought was, what do I have to offer? What's inspirational about me? I'm not into a lot of the self-help type stuff is just not my thing, you know. I've got a good friend who is, and I was like, well, he'd be good for that. And so it took me, and Tyler had actually asked me a long time ago to be on it kind of, and I was like, I don't have anything to offer. And then he asked me again, and I thought, you know, if Tyler's asked me, there has to be a reason. And so, so then after I said, yeah, I really started to think about it and said, what can I offer? And I got pretty excited about it.
So are you a fan of our hero, George Bailey in the movie, It's a Wonderful Life?
I am.
Okay, good. Well,
Absolutely.
hey, so that I just need to tell you just the little bit of background you've given me starting at the age of 5 and seeing where you are right now. I'm in. I'm all in, 100% interested in where that journey, where that goes, right? Or how you get there.
And I think it's, you know, again, it's hard to like put your finger on, but you know, when Clint and I, we were 19, 20, we were like 20 years old when we were, you know, roommates. And I just think like, at that time when we got connected, I don't know. I always felt like we were on the same page about a lot of stuff. I mean, even though obviously our backgrounds are different, we come from different places, but, yeah, I mean, I just think that we're kind of simpatico on some things, and I've always felt that way. I mean, Clint's probably thinking right now, like, dude, I've been trying to get this guy to lose my number for years, but it just hasn't worked up to this point. So,
not at all. Have I ever told you, Tyler, how I ended up? I probably have. Do you remember how I ended up being your companion?
I don't remember. Kind
of the story.
No, break it down for us.
So when I went on a mission was kind of hard for me. I have a little bit of a speech impediment. I'm not a big religious person as far as putting it out there. Religion to me has always been really, really private. So I kind of took a leap and said, I'm going to go on a mission. You know, nobody in my family had. I was the first one to ever go on a mission. So no, I didn't know what to really expect. Didn't have any older brothers or anything. So when I went, it was pretty tough. I originally got called to the Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic Prague mission. And I was excited about that actually. And I went to the MTC, and that's when this growing sense of dread started hitting me, because the Czech language is one of the hardest to speak. Just because a lot of the sounds. Combine that with my speech issues, and I knew it was going to be really tough. But I said, I'm going to do this. And so went over there. I was over there for a few months, and I hit a real low because it was just incredibly frustrating. I could learn these words, I could learn it, but I couldn't speak. And so after a lot of prayer, and I feel sorry for my first companion I had over there, because I was just kind of a jerk to him, because I was just so angry, and I felt like the Lord had kind of just abandoned me. Right. I thought, I'm putting out the faith, I'm going, and I'm not getting it back. And so after talking with the mission president and stuff, they did something that's kind of unusual. They agreed to basically change my calling. And I think I was out there for 4 months. And that's when I got called back to the U.S., an English-speaking mission. I didn't pick Ohio. They picked that, but got back there. And it was a good deal, especially at first. I felt so much better. I could communicate. And so I felt rejuvenated. I was with Elder Dyer and Rudder, and Dyer is been on your page too. I saw him on there.
Yeah.
Good guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it was good. And then I went to an area with Elder Hardy, and that was good. Don't need to get into all of these details, but then I had a companion that we didn't get along so well, and I was like, then I got moved over to the Ohio, the Dayton side of the mission, and in the Ohio, right? There were two sides at that time. There was Dayton, and there was Columbus, and they were kind of almost two separate missions. They had kind of a, I don't know what you'd call him, but he was kind of like a mission president for the Dayton side. I don't remember his name. Tyler.
Yeah, he was one of the counselors that lived over there on the Dayton side. Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody over there. I got put in this area called Miamisburg, all hills. It was a bike area. It was in the fall. I was with Elder Manning. If he watches this, I don't want him. He didn't want any bad feelings, but we did not get together. We did not.
Not jive, man. All right.
I did not. And so I got a terrible sinus infection, horrible, the worst I've ever had. It rained for pretty much the whole month I was there. Elder Manning wanted to go out and tracked in the rain on bikes. I have a sinus infection. I'm just like, I can't do this thing, right? And I would sit there and lay in bed, and he would get all dressed up and put plastic bags on his shoes and get his jacket on his backpack. And he would sit there beside my bed and he would stare at me. And it doesn't matter if I laid there 3 hours, he would stare at me. And so we didn't get along. Let's just say that. So eventually I was able to, there was a doctor in that state that we were supposed to go to. They didn't want us going to any emergency rooms or anything. Eventually he was able to get me some medication, got over that. And then we went, so I was done at that point. I'm like, I'm in Dayton. Kansas City's not that far away. I can hop on a bus and be there in less than a day. I can be gone, right? This mission thing, I've given it its time. I've done it almost a year. I'm done. The APs came to go on splits with us. And it was your friend, Tyler. I can't think of his name. What's his name? The AP, who's your friend?
K.
I can't believe I forgot his name. So we go on splits, and I go with him. I've never met him before. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he, I tell him, I'm just honest with him. I say, I'm done. This is not working. And then he's like, well, what can I do? What can we do? I'm like, I got to get out of here. I said, I got to get a new guy. I can't stay here with Elder Manning in this area. It isn't working. And so I'm thinking it's done. He's like, well, wait, don't do anything until transfers. We'll see what we can do. And sure enough, transfers come, and I find out I'm getting sent back to the Ohio side, about as far as you can get. Dayton and Newark are about as far as you can get. And he hooked me up, and I don't know, I guess this comes down to faith, right? Did the Lord know what I needed at that time? Did they put me with you because you were zone leader and I was a problem? I don't know. Who knows?
Well, you were a problem for
but
sure.
I like to think that, yeah. So I like to think that the Lord had a hand in it.
Well, it's funny you tell that story because Kay and I, we communicated all the time, and he never once mentioned any of that to me, and which I think is interesting. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so again, I don't even know if he remembers it, because he went on splits with lots of missionaries and stuff. But that really was the change in my mission. And so now, to dote on Tyler a little bit, I get out there and I'd been, I was at the low for my mission. And I go out there and I meet Tyler, and immediately I was like, it's a pretty cool guy, when you got moved to different missionaries, you would on the sly call other people and be like, is this guy pretty cool? What's this guy like? Right.
What's the word on this guy?
Yeah. And so everybody's like, oh yeah, he's a cool guy. And I get out there, and just the area kind of worked. And I, like, the first day we got there, he took me over to see Chris Baxis and her family, which was this family that they were teaching. And she was so nice to me, and I just kind of fell in love with her and her family. And from then on, it was go time. And the thing about Tyler is he would work hard, but he wasn't over the top. If I had a sinus infection and I was dying, he wasn't going to stand over my bed with a raincoat on staring at me. So it was a good balance, that a lot of missionaries can't get, that balance between not doing stuff that's real bad, but having enough flexibility. And that's what I really needed. And Tyler helped me out with that a lot. And so I went through my first year there. We did we did the whole thing there. And then, yeah, ended up being like 6 or 7 months out there.
Yeah. It's a good time, man. Good time. I mean, I had a good time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Always have a good time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had a routine, and we were lucky. There was another set of missionaries who's in that area, and Aaron Jurgatis was there, who's a great guy. And we just all kind of clicked together. And it really, really helped me. It really helped my faith at that time. So I'll always be thankful to Tyler, because if it wasn't for Tyler, I don't think I'd have made it that last year.
Well, let's talk about a little bit. I mean, we've got listeners from all different walks, right? All different experiences. Yeah. When you think about how close you were to quitting, that the mission is a microcosm of life.
It is.
And sometimes in life, it rains, and then sometimes in life, it's all uphill, right? So how did you relate that experience after Ohio? What did that do for you as a man coming home?
Excellent question. First of all, I could come home with honor, and I hate to say that, but I could come home knowing that I did it. That I set out. I said I was going to do 2 years, and I did 2 years. So,
which is a big deal, by the way. Yeah.
What was that? That's
a big deal, by the way.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it is. And so that was a big deal for me. And I was telling Tyler when he asked me to do this, and I agreed finally. The other day, I went for a walk kind of out in the woods at a park not too far from me where I like to go, and I hiked, and I kind of thought about a lot of this stuff. And I thought about how during my mission, there were kind of 3 low spots. One, when I was in the Czech Republic, and I just felt so alone and I couldn't communicate. 2, when I was out about a year. And then 3, it was after Tyler, and I had a few companions. I moved around, and I was just getting burnt out big time. And I talked to the mission president at the time, and I kind of asked him, I need something. And he ended up moving me into the office for my last few months, which was good for me. And I was able to learn some other things. So what I kind of learned and took from that for life is that there's always a way. Find a different way. And that's kind of been my theme since then, to find a different way. At each one of those spots, I could have quit and just come home. But instead, the Lord put somebody in my path. I found somebody that I could talk to and offer and think of a different solution. And actually, at each one of those junctions, it wasn't a solution that was just handed to me. It was a solution that I was that I was a part of. So I had to offer it, like when I talked to Kate, I was like, is there any way I could get moved back over there to the Columbus side? I have people over there who I know. I'd feel a little more comfortable. Towards the end of my mission, when I was getting kind of burned out, and I talked to President Hancock, and I was like, gosh, is there any way that I could, do something a little different, maybe like office type stuff or whatever? And so I think maybe the Lord was putting things in my mind that then I could relate to them. And then, of course, they have to agree to it and pray on as well. So throughout my life, that's been kind of, and as I look back, I think I've done that the whole time. With the speech issues I've had, I had to find a different way to speak from the time that I was little. Different way to formulate words, and I'm much better now as an adult because I've gotten used to it. But I think finding a different way to do things has always been something I do, and whether that's church stuff, whether that's at my job. We mentioned earlier that I'd started a practice, and I started it much earlier than what I had wanted to, because I was doing it a different way. I was doing it maybe a little bit different way than what other people were doing. I like to work on cars. I like to do that. I like to find different ways to do things. surgery is one of my things I really like to do as far as my job. And a lot of times I like to think of different things, different ways to do it. That doesn't mean I throw away everything that's happened before. I read the surgery books. I see how other people have done it. I use that as a roadmap, but I try to find my own way to do it. So more than anything else, I think that it'd be find a different way.
I love that, man.
There's so many things there, though. I mean, Clint, I appreciate you letting us in on that a little bit. I mean, for starters, I'm taking away from that. We don't know our limits.
No, we don't.
Right?
Yeah.
We really don't know on both ends.
Yeah.
We don't know how low we can go, and we don't know how high we can go. But I do know that when we are low, you wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for other people.
No, I wouldn't.
And I think so many times we think we got this and we got to go that low road alone. Right. And I think too, Tyler, of a quote a while back, I think you shared, the purpose of our existence is to find the load that we can carry, the maximum load that we can carry and carry it.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. And then when you mention the speech challenges, I'm an educator, I'm an administrator, and I've sat in some IEPs. And as I'm hearing you, I'm thinking of the kids that I've worked with and that I've tried to support and I've tried to help. And it's fascinating that you say a different way, because I think immediately of kids that struggle with dyslexia, right? Their brain is able to find another way. Yeah. And it can be processing it just as quickly, but it cannot process it the way that traditional, right? I don't want to say normal or, right. There's a path and then there's another way to do it. And it's not an intelligence thing, right? It's a training thing.
Correct.
And that brain is an amazing thing. We are amazing people, right? And the idea is like, if you can learn the strategies and skills, which clearly, boom, right? You're there. It's just incredible how quick we are to deduct, right? How quick we are to come at it with like a deficit mindset and say, oh, you've just moved to this country. You don't speak English, therefore you're at a deficit. It's like, no, I'm not at a deficit right now. I just can't do it your way. Right.
I gotta believe too, like, I don't know, Clint, like, I think, you're talking about, growing up with, with your mom and the experience of kind of moving and the struggles there. I mean, that whole idea of finding a different way, I mean, it sounds like, right, that's something that, you kind of saw from a young age, right?
Correct.
And it's the hustle,
right?
Tyler.
It's the hustle. And I look, nobody likes to be in the middle of the hustle, but man, I admire the hustle. You know what I mean? I just admire that. Like,
yeah, don't knock the hustle, right? Like it's that spirit of like, you know what? It's the rat that falls in the cream and churns it into butter and gets out, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the idea. Like I've got to find a way out of here because failure is not an option.
Yeah.
And when you truly say that, and you take that option off the table, it's amazing what someone can accomplish.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very interesting to me that the way that you say that how different people respond differently to that situation, right? So some people put in a situation where they're got a single mom and they have a lot more freedom than a 7-8-year-old should have, and they don't have much support there, and will go one way, and some people will go another way. All my siblings, I have a younger brother who wasn't exposed to any of that. He's my half brother, and he was born later. So, but my sister and my older brother and I all have done fairly well, even though some horrific things happened to us. And it's interesting to think why that is. Why different people respond differently.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I can necessarily answer that. I think it's a lot of things. Obviously, it's the people that are put in place. It's just something that's in your makeup, you know. I mean, it's your parents, even though they're trying their best and they think they're failing. You know, my mom, I'm sure at the time thought she was totally failing, and I know she did. But we've all made it through, and sure, we have scars, but everyone has scars. And I know that she blames herself, but I've never blamed her for anything. I mean, life is what it is, you know. She made her decisions, we made ours, and life has been good for me. So, but I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, on why one person takes a situation like that and turns it into something positive, and one person turns it into something not so positive.
I mean, I can't pretend to know the answer to that, but I can say that, like, when we're looking at, you know, you look at what the example, like I think of your mom and Mike's mom, you know, doing the things that they did, and probably the whole way thinking, I'm screwing this thing up in a big way. And I mean, as people, we're just taking mental notes, you know. It's like, you know, I remember my parents struggling and watching that and not knowing what to make of it. But I think the lesson that I learned is that they were going to soldier through this, and they were going to get to the other, something was going to happen. Like there was no quit in it. You know what I mean? And I think that sort of starts to become part of your DNA. And Mike, you and I talked about this the other day about entrepreneurship and why, you know, builders versus, you know, whatever else. And, you know, and you said, why do you feel that way, Tyler? And I said, shoot, I watched my dad for years grind, man. Even when things were bad, the hustle was happening, you know? And so I think it starts to become, well, this is the only thing I know. Like when things are rough, honestly, my go-to is work harder. You know, like,
but I think it is. I don't have the answers either, Clint. And really quick, I don't even want to pretend that me talking about it indicates that I'm somewhere. Right.
For sure. Yeah. I agree.
We're on this continuum, and it bends, right? And life
Absolutely.
is long, hopefully, but life is long and success goes to the grinder. But I will say, I think that one of the huge pieces is what is happening in that person's ear. What are they saying to themselves? Because everything that my mom went through, it was always like, hey, son, you can be anything. Yeah, hey, son, you can go get this. And hey, son, one day we're going to be living right. Right. One day we're going to be eating some Captain Crunch, right?
No lima beans, man. No
one
lima
day,
beans.
hey son, one day we'll be laughing about eating lima beans, right? And so it's like, what do we tell ourselves? And when that's modeled to you at a young age, it sticks.
Yeah.
And someone is in there, unfortunately, sadly enough, last week we had Michael Burke on here. April is Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, right? Somebody is out there putting things in people's heads like you're a mistake, right? Like you can't, like you shouldn't, don't try that, don't think that, right? Like, I think that code, that script that we tell ourselves, Tyler just said, no matter what, on the other end of it, we were going to get somewhere, right? And like, I think that code of the grinder, that grit, that, hey, hope, right, Tyler? Like the future tomorrow can be better than it was today, and you can do something about it. You give that to someone and they will move heaven and earth to make that happen. You crush it and everything goes.
It's interesting too, because it's, you know, as we're talking, you know, and you ask, well, you know, why Clint, right? And what made you guys click? Maybe that's part of it. You know, you kind of, you get around people that have seen some stuff and experienced some things and had to rely on their own kind of grit and determination. And I can relate to that, you know, on a certain level, probably not on the same level as you guys, but I can relate to that, you know, and so getting around guys like Clint and you, Mike, and I think there's a sense of, we're on the same page. We know what to do.
Hey, Clint,
Mhm.
like hats off to you, because you are statistically an anomaly, right? Like you don't get a lot of folks that come from your walk that are cutting open animals
For the right reasons.
for the right reasons.
Right reasons.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
for the right reasons. Exactly.
you don't get that. And so I'm all about exploring the outlier.
Yeah.
Right? I'm all about, wait a minute, single parent, homeless stretch. That's an interesting chapter.
Yeah.
Foster care, just from a demographics, you've got adverse childhood experiences, you've got that ACEs score, you're starting to tick off, and like statistically, you shouldn't be making the choices to go serve a mission.
Yeah.
Right. So I am dying to know how those things happen. Right. Statistically, you shouldn't be going to college. Statistically, you shouldn't be graduating with a doctor degree. And you shouldn't be, honestly, if you were to play out the numbers, you shouldn't be enjoying healthy relationships. You should be racked with some things, right? Because that's how that script plays out in the lives of a lot of people. So hopefully when you're out walking around in the woods, your heart's full.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that's why I pose that question to you guys, because I'm aware of that. And not to toot my own horn or anything. It's just, sometimes it's interesting to think back and try to think what makes me different, Yeah. I'm not any better than anybody else. I don't think I have anything that's any different than anyone else. Definitely what some of the stuff you said about in your ear, my mom, even through all that, always was, you can do whatever you want. You can be she always wanted, I want to be a doctor, and she never did, because of just like, she ended up becoming a nurse, and she had a very good career, and she went to college later, but
good for her.
She always wanted us to be doctors and to be lawyers and to do, she always reach for the top. And so there was never anything in her mind that we couldn't do. Education was always very important to her. So I think she's part of that. And then my mom and I have always had a real strong bond. It's my older brother was born kind of an accident type deal going on. She was very young. My sister, when she was born, my younger sister, that was right about the time that my parents got divorced. So I think I was kind of born in this sweet spot, and so I got to have this special bond with my mom. And she has a lot to do with it, I think. Just giving me that will and that drive and she told me, frankly, when she was growing up, about alcoholism in her family and the things that kind of tore her family apart. And so even before LDS principles, I was never a drinker or a smoker or anything else. Because I saw she smoked, and she doesn't anymore, but I saw the health problems from all that. I saw that my mom instilled that in me, that alcohol, this is what's destroyed, our family. And so I think I have to put a lot of that back on my mom, even though I was in some of those, we were homeless, and I remember spending Christmas a year in a tent in a park. We lived in a tent in a park, and we had Christmas there. And but she was always, I never felt abandoned by her. I was never abused by her. There was always love there, even if she couldn't provide a lot of what she wanted to. So if I had to look at it, I would say initially it's my mom. Now there's other things along the way that we can talk about that led me specifically to going on a mission and kind of my faith journey. But I think what pulled me out of there is a lot of those lessons that my mom instilled in me.
It's interesting, Clinton. One of the things I really remember about Newark is, or Nurk, however we want to say that. I've reverted back to the California version of it, but I remember your mom, just being positive in the communication that she had with you. And, I know I used to tease you and we'd laugh at a lot of stuff, but I always remember your mom was like very, very much a positive influence, even at that point,
Yeah.
Hey, Clint.
Always has been.
Yeah.
As you stand in your life right now, how do you honor her?
Wow. I think the best way that I honor her is by being a good husband and father, or trying to be, because that's what she always wanted. And I say that as if she's not still alive. She is. But that's what she really wanted. She wanted, and the same thing with my other two brothers and sisters. She wanted us to be upstanding people, treat our spouses well, treat other people well, raise our kids. And so the way that I can make my mom proud is that, and that's what I think. If anything, you say honor, I think that's the best way that we honor our parents, is by mirroring what they taught us. Right. I don't think she's proud of me that I've have academic achievements, that I have a business, that kind of stuff. But I think what really is important to her, that you're just a good human being. Because from having my own kids, that's where I am as well. As long as you're a good human being, that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I gotta ask this. I gotta ask couple things. I'm gonna piggyback a couple questions off of that thought of you in a tent.
Sure.
Number one, that's the premise of the show, right? Like, rich is who you're with, and not necessarily where you're at, and the circumstances has nothing to do with the circumstances. Everything to do with the focus, right? But like here in the Reading area, we have some homeless folks, and people react and respond a little differently, right? Like I might react or respond a little differently than someone else. And we have faith groups that are trying to help, and we have some people saying, hey, we need to shut down that mission because that draws people in. It's a controversial issue.
Sure.
Having your background, how do you feel when you see a beggar holding up a petition?
Wow. I guess that's an interesting question. I think it can be different at different times. I'd like to say that I always show compassion, but that would be a lie. There are times when I do and times when I don't. I have a lot of compassion for women and children more so. But to be honest with you, that's something that I could definitely improve on. If I see the guy who's on the corner and he's always on that corner in town and he's begging, I'm pretty cynical, I see a kid on the other hand who's dirty, and you can tell they're not in a good spot. Then I'm all about helping that person. So
no, I appreciate that answer, because that feels real to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because I think the challenge is, and Tyler, we're always talking about the challenge of remembering.
Yeah.
It's funny because I remember when I got my first teaching job, and I thought I had made it. I always joked with my wife that, hey, when we make it, we're done with this poor college student thing. We make it, we're going to have things like Listerine. And we're going to have that cinnamon raisin bread that you walk by in the red bag, right? So check this out. I remember going to the interview, and it clicked, right? The interview was great. First teaching gig. I stopped by the grocery store and I pick up Listerine and cinnamon bread. And I throw it in a paper bag. Yeah. And I remember walking into the house. We were living at her mom's. And she said, how did the interview go? And I said, it's all right. They asked a couple challenging questions, and I had to say I don't know to a couple of them. And she's like, you said I don't know in a couple of job interview questions. And as she's saying this, right, I hand her the bag and I kind of go into the kitchen or whatever. She opens up the bag and sees Listerine and cinnamon raisin bread. And we kind of have a moment, right? Like all that hard work.
Yeah.
Like this is the start of something kind of cool. And I'm just wondering, Clint, when you received that doctorate, right? That doctor's degree in veterinary science. Tell me how that mountaintop felt.
I was the first person in my family as well to go to college, the traditional route. So I guess I probably felt a little bit of pressure up front. I didn't want to let my mom down. When I got my degree, when I was finally done, I guess best thing I would describe it would be numb. I didn't really know what to think. Everything had led up to that. I don't know what I should have expected, but I think numb would be the first, which might not be what you'd think, but I just saw it. And then, I was then a week later, I was at work and working and doing my job. And I remember having a lot of imposter syndrome. You know what that is? Where,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that right now. That right now.
Yeah. So being there and like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going in and talking to these clients about their animals, and I'm just talking, and they're believing me, and I don't even know if anything I'm saying is true. And so it's taken a while to get over that. But I would say when I eventually got there and I got that degree and we finally got there, it was just, my wife and I got married right before I started undergrad. So she'd been with me the whole time. We were poor and lived in little tiny apartments and worked side jobs. And she got her nursing degree and kind of carried me through vet school. So it was kind of a group thing for us,
That's awesome. What's your wife's name?
Elena.
Okay.
Yeah. She's my rock. She's
I love how you said when we got there.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was, I couldn't have done it. I could have done it alone, but it would have been a totally different journey. Right. So that's, I guess, how I describe it would be numb. I was proud, but it was kind of like another day, and it's time to get to work now. And
yeah. Well, I can tell you, Clint, I know I've called you over the years, like when my lab ate a tube sock, and whatever you told me on the phone, I was believing. So good job, man.
What is it with dogs and tube socks?
I don't know, man. No, and for the record, I don't think I own a pair of tube socks. So I don't even know where it comes from, man.
Socks and underwear. That's what they eat. Socks and underwear all the time.
I don't believe you don't own tube socks. I think you're right there with your elastic bottom sweats.
That's for me to know, and you guys to just wonder. Oh man. So Clint, can you kind of take us through, I am curious about, one of the things that stands out to me that you talked about, I mean, you talk about this, the journey of the struggle,
mm-hmm.
And Mike brings up the word remember. And I'm curious, is that a driver for you? Is that something that you think about, or is that just subconsciously? I mean, where does that factor in?
You mean to remember where I came from?
Yeah, where you came from.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it is more so now, to be honest with you. When I was younger, I didn't want to dwell on it, Yeah. I think now I do more often. I look back, and so I can really appreciate it. Not just that. So not just the real bad times.
Sure.
But I was talking to my wife and the other day, and we had a really good year last year with the pandemic stuff going on. A lot of people got animals and they were bored, I think, and so we ended up. And I think we were one of the only businesses that was open, and so I think some people were just coming there because they wanted to get out of the house for a lot of reasons. So we had a really good year, and so we had to pay this giant tax bill anyway. And as I'm talking to her about this giant tax bill, and we both kind of realized that this sum of money that years ago would have been unthinkable to pay was just something that we do now, you know, how you adjust to things. And
normalize it, right? It becomes normal.
We do. And so I think that helped me put in perspective to really appreciate the way it is now. You know, we struggled. And when I first opened that practice, I started it from nothing. So I didn't buy a practice. I started it from absolutely ground zero. If I had to do it again, I don't know that I would. But at the time, I was younger and I was going to do it. And it's now we've built it up slowly. And at the beginning, I was working sometimes 80, 90 hours a week, and it was pretty common. I still work sometimes 50 or 60, but as life is going on, I'm trying to get that work-life balance a little bit better. But that it was the grind that you guys were talking about, the hustle, and I've always had that in me. And my wife too. She's from a huge family, 8 kids. Her father worked for the church as a maintenance guy. Her mom didn't work. She would take occasional jobs if they needed to buy something. They never had debt. They paid everything in cash. Very unique family. They never, but so she comes from that. And then from my upbringing, we were both kind of, I think, tailor-made to make this journey, to start something from scratch and build it.
I love that.
We could definitely embrace that grind, and not, I mean, I didn't have premium type, I didn't have cable, satellite, anything until we moved and built this house in 2005. And then we were out in the country. We didn't get good stuff. And I said, dang it, I'm a veterinarian now. You're a nurse. I'm going to get a friggin' satellite and actually watch other channels. Right. But my whole life up to that point, up till I was about 30, I didn't have any of that.
Wow.
We had one cell phone that we shared. We had a couple old cars. I mean, we just lived real simple. And we were happy.
Hey, Clint, were there any Dayton moments in that hustle, right? So you talk about working 80, 90 hours.
Yeah.
And were there some moments where the vision of what you were trying to do, what you were trying to build, maybe felt a little foggy and things felt a little elusive and you were ready to pack it up and pack it in?
With the practice itself, never. Once I committed to it, I was in. I was going to ride that thing into the ground, or it was going to succeed. Those are my only two options. So, it's talking about there is probably the lowest point in my life, and Tyler knows about this. About 2 or 3 years in, 2 years into my practice, we're trying to get this thing built up. My middle son, Gabe, who's now 15, was diagnosed with malignant brain cancer. And that is probably the lowest point of my life. Because like I said before, my motto in life is to find a different way to fix things. My wife always, she calls me the fixer, right? Because I like to work on things. I like to fix things. That's part of why I like being a surgeon. I like being a vet. I like to fix things. Whether it's a car, a radio, a dog's broken leg, I just like to fix things, right? And that was something I couldn't fix. And I get a little bit, but so that was probably the lowest. And then you had the pressures of the clinic on top of that.
Mhm.
But what really pulled me through that was really good friends. I had a friend that I had met at a previous job who was a vet, and he took time off of his job where he was working, took a vacation basically, came over and worked at my clinic for me when I was dealing with this stuff for 2 weeks. Now the cancer thing was months, and we had to, but that to keep me going. I had some reps for some different companies who had become friends with, who donated a bunch of supplies. And so that were all these little things. We had the community did a fundraiser to raise money to help us pay bills, and so I could really feel that community aspect around me at that time. And that was my lowest. But again, there were people there to pick me up.
Clint, can I remind me how old was Gabe at that time when he was diagnosed?
3.
When he was diagnosed,
He was 3.
He was 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's 3.5, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, because I'm not the guy that can fix everything, but my go-to when things are like chaotic or hard or out of my control is to work more. Like that's my thing. Like just throw myself into it a little bit more. And I think part of that is like a distraction for me from maybe the things that I really have to be dealing with. And I'm curious, you're the fixer. This is a situation you can't fix. How do you deal with that? And specifically, how do you deal with that in the quiet moment? And I say that because for me, I throw myself into it. I work harder, but at some point I find myself with my own thoughts, and that's where things can get a little hairy, Yeah. Where I've got to sort of process those things. So I'm curious, how do you deal in those quiet moments when you can't be hands-on?
There it's difficult, right? That's why it was the low point for me. Not only is my son sick and he's probably not going to make it at the time, it's very rare kind of cancer. So they weren't sure how it was going to shake out. They weren't sure with his surgery if he was going to, when he had surgery. So he had a seizure. This is how fast it went. My niece and nephew were over. My nephew comes out and says, "Gabe's acting funny." I'm like, okay. I'm like, "Hey, Gabe, come here." He walks out. He's looking at me kind of funny. He looks normal, but he's looking at me kind of funny. I'm like, "Hey, Gabe, how's it going?" He won't say anything. And he was a pretty good talker at that age. So I'm like, what's going on here? And then I get this kind of inspiration in my mind. I'm like, he loved ice cream at that time. And I was like, "Do you want some ice cream?" And he kind of shakes his head. Yeah. I'm like, "What is this? What is this?" And he wouldn't say anything. And at that point, I realized that he couldn't talk. And then with my training and everything else, I said, I bet he had a seizure. And so I go and I call my mom, because she was working at Children's Mercy Hospital, which is a great hospital here for kids. And I said, we need to go down there. And then we stopped by Elena because she was at work that night, and picked her up. And we went there. Half an hour later, he gets an MRI. He gets a CT scan, has a tumor. So we go from having a normal kid to a kid who's probably going to die in the space of 4 hours. And then he's going to have surgery a couple days later. And they're telling, we do the surgery. He might not remember you. He might not be able to talk. He might not. So I don't know. So we going through all of these steps, right? Where you could lose him. And like I said, I would like to fix it, but I can't. So, in those quiet moments in between, gosh, I guess it's trite to say, but prayer, really, that was about it. Just to try to get some sense that everything was going to be okay. And to be honest, I didn't get that. I don't know, but in the end, it's worked out. He's doing great. He hasn't really had any side effects at all. And there's a lot of other details in there with his treatments that we decided to do and treatments that we didn't. Kind of, I'll share one with you guys that shows kind of, again, where people are put in your path. They wanted to do radiation on it. So he had surgery and he had chemo, and then they did some genetic studies on his tumor and found out he's 3. He's 3.5. Yeah. And so we're going through all this stuff, and they want to do radiation. And I don't feel good about it. I know a lot about radiation. I know a lot of what it does, especially in a young kid's brain. And at the time, my brother and sister were working they're both, my brother and sister-in-law are both nurses, and they were working at Loma Linda in California, which has got one of the first proton radiation centers. They use it primarily to treat prostate cancer now, but it can be used for other things too. And we talked to the oncologist here, and they're like, you won't get in there. They don't see brain tumors anymore. There's only a couple other places at that time in the country that had it. And I said, well, I think I've got an in, right? So I talked to my brother and my sister-in-law, and they, through back channels, get a hold of the lady who's kind of in charge of that department. And she calls me directly. And long story short, through a bunch of connections, we were able to get Gabe out there, and they agreed to take him on because his tumor was so rare. And we were able to make that decision instead of the radiation. And I really think that was guided by God, as well as putting all these people in our path that we could get there. Having the education to know to ask the right questions, because just your layperson wouldn't know to ask a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Later on, they wanted to do what's called stem cell transplant, which is almost like a bone marrow transplant. And it has catastrophic side effects in someone his age. And, and my wife and I, after sitting and listening to him, we just said, it's not right for him. And we didn't do it. And everything has turned out, knock on wood, so far, he's been great. And so I have to think that the Lord was guiding us through that, and preparing us from the time that I was in school, learning these things, and my wife in school. Everything led up to that, to making those decisions.
Hey, Tyler, can I ask for an indulgence here really quick? Clint, you talk about this friend who comes and works in your practice.
Yeah, he did.
Right. And it makes me think of that. There's a story recently I put up on the town, and really, because that's the spirit of this, right? That we're a tribe, that we're a village. I'm just going to read this. Okay. 1918 in Lehi, Utah. George Goetz is a farmer. He's a beet farmer, and there's an influenza pandemic happening. It claims the lives of George's son, Charles, and 3 of Charles's small children, 2 little girls and a boy. In the course of only 6 days, grieving George Goetz made 3 separate trips to Ogden, Utah, to bring the bodies home for burial. At the end of this terrible interlude, George and his young son, Francis, hitched up their wagon and headed back to the beet field, because beets got to be harvested, right? That's what he does. On the way, they passed wagon after wagon load of beets being hauled to the factory and driven by neighborhood farmers. As they passed by, each driver would wave a greeting. Hi, Uncle George. Sure sorry, George. Tough break, George. You got a lot of friends, George. On the last wagon was freckle-faced Jasper Rolfe. He waved a cheery greeting and called out, "That's all of them, Uncle George." When they arrived at the farm gate, Francis jumped down off the big red beet wagon and opened the gates as his father drove onto the field. George pulled up, stopped the team and scanned the field. There wasn't a sugar beet on the whole field. Then it dawned upon him that Jasper Rolfe, what he meant when he called out, "That's all of them, Uncle George." This man who brought 4 of his loved ones home for burial in the course of only 6 days, made caskets, dug graves, and even helped with the burial clothing. This amazing man who never faltered, nor flinched, nor wavered throughout this agonizing ordeal, sat down on a pile of beet tops and sobbed like a little child. Then he arose, wiped his eyes, looked up at the sky, and said, "Thanks, Father, for the love of these dear friends." Right? I mean,
that's a great story. I've heard it before. It is a great story. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Like that friend dropping everything and coming and saying, "I got a guy who needs me right now," and is going through the unimaginable, right? Like you said, 4 hours, in a span of 4 hours, you could be losing your kid. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you sharing that story, but I'm really grateful for the example of that friend and that circle, right?
Well,
we all need that circle.
Yeah. And Mike, I can't help, Clint, you're kind of pointing out these, as you're talking, you'd said, well, there's people put in the path, there's things that are sort of there. And as you're saying it, man, it is crazy to think of all of the things, right? Elena becoming a nurse, you going to school to study medicine, and just being able to ask these questions, your brother and your sister-in-law at Loma Linda. I mean, it's wild because in the moment, right, you're just kind of going through it and you're like, oh man, it's just, you're going through the motions. It's just happening. It's life coming at you. But I love that ability to be able to stop and kind of look behind and go, wait a second. There's some dots that are connected here that maybe shouldn't have been connected, because I feel like this all the time. Like people talk about miracles, right? And I think when we have a discussion about miracles, people are like, well, God's hand comes in and moves you out of the way of a moving bus or whatever, right? It's like this, something that you could say that was a miracle, right? That was it. And I think if we just looked at what you just described, this journey with Gabe, there's, to me, like just the story of it, I'm saying, yeah, that's wild. This is terrible. But as you stop and say, but then, I had this education where I could ask this question, and Elena knew about this, and we had this. Like, I think that's the miraculous thing, right? And I feel like this is my challenge for my own self, right? Because I'm a guy that steps over miracles all the time, and I'm just like, yep, that was dumb luck. Good job, Tyler. You know what I mean? Like I do that all the time, and I just think that you talking about this is just a reminder to me that I think sometimes, like for me, I need to hit the brakes, stop the car, look in the rearview mirror, and kind of see what just happened over 25 years of marriage, right? Because it's just life. We're just going down the rapids in the boat, and hopefully we don't fall out, But when we get to the calm waters, I feel like, man, I got to be better at looking back and going, holy cow, like it was good because I knew Clint Watkins, or I knew Mike Freeman, or you know what I mean? Like to me, that's just such a big deal, and I'm not good at it. And I love that reminder of there's stuff that happens that is not just dumb luck, it's not just dumb luck. It's preparation, man. And I love that.
When you talk about preparation, Clint, I'm curious. I see here in my notes that young Elder Watkins, trying to learn the Czech language, was angry.
I was
angry with God. Can we be real for a minute? And when you find out your 3-year-old son is diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, was there some anger there too?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I tried my best. I will tell you that I made a special point to try to not be angry with God. There was anger, but not to what the degree you would think. It was more frustration and hopelessness than anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, and I still kind of feel bad about it to this day. We were sitting in the room, and the doctor came in, who was a friend of my mom's, because my mom had worked at the hospital for 30 years, and she was crying, and so I'm like, oh, this is bad. It was after we took the CT scan, and then she took us back to see it, and then we went back in the room, a small room, and Gabe had actually fallen asleep, and my wife and my mom were trying to, everybody's crying, and they're just trying to comfort me. And at that point, I didn't want comfort. I didn't really want anything. And I still think back at that, and I feel bad because I pushed my mom away and my wife away, and I was just like, just let me be. But at the time, when you feel helpless, you just don't know where to turn. And that's where I really had to try to turn to God, because I just didn't have anything else at that point. And then now that changed over time, and my wife and I really came together. So I didn't push her apart, push her away for the whole thing. But at that exact moment, I still feel bad that I didn't have enough in me to offer them any kind of comfort, or even accept comfort from them. And so I think that was kind of a lesson for me, in that giving comfort and aid to people is important, but also being able to accept it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I think part of that, I mean, I don't know, but I think part of that's got to be that fixer, mentality as well, right? Like, I can't fix this, and someone's coming over here to give me some comfort, and I should be fixing things. And so therefore, let's keep this at arm's distance until I can wrap my head around it. But I agree with you 100%. I love that lesson of, I mean, it's important to be able to give help, right? I mean, we all know that, but to accept help, sometimes that's even harder, right? To just say, I need something right now.
Hey, Clint, how old is Gabe?
He's 15.
So kind of going back to that, you're in a house and you're trying to remember days when you were in a tent.
Yeah.
When you're hanging out with your 15-year-old son, do you ever think about those days?
I really try not to. I mean, I do occasionally. I'll kind of marvel at him, because he's a perfect kid. He's smart, and he's really athletic, and he's determined, and all of the side effects they said he was going to have, he hasn't had any of them. I mean, he's a miracle. So I try not to, and he doesn't like to think about him. And probably about the time that he turned about 10, he didn't want to hear anything about that anymore.
He was done.
Yeah, he was done with it, and he didn't want to think about it. And he has some friends now, because he's got a plate, and there's screws that you can feel in his head, and his real good friends know about it, and they'll sometimes give him a hard time. But for the most part, he's come to terms with what he wants to come to terms with it. And so I don't bring it up, and I don't think about it. I guess I'm a little bit superstitious, and if you kind of dwell on it, sure. I'm also one of those people who I never say that and you'll never hear me say this, that you've noticed, but I won't say he's cured. I won't say anything like that, because I knowing what I know, cancer can come back anytime, different kinds of cancer. His treatments he had could cause him cancer in the future. So maybe that's being a little bit of a pessimist, maybe, but I just think, I acknowledge that it happened, and I thank God every day, no matter how low my faith gets, no matter what's going on, every day I thank God that he's here.
So here's the Here's the $1 million question, Clint.
Yeah.
You can answer this, right? All the problems are going to be solved trying to be husbands and fathers in 2021. How can we be dependent upon God in good times like you were dependent on God when your son was going through that? You just said, right? It's all, I turned to him because that's all I had.
Yeah.
And how is it that we could find a way to turn to him like he's all we have when we have all this other stuff?
Gosh, that is $1 million question, isn't it? How do you, I think as human beings, I think we have to be brought low to really seek that at that level, to seek that connection to God. I think that's a different level of spirituality. Gosh, you wonder if great men of God throughout history and stuff, if they have that, if they have that burning need to talk to God every single day that I had when my son was sick. I guess I never thought about it that way. It's interesting that you pose that need that I had, that should be a permanent need. I would guess that we should all have.
Sounds easy, right? Sounds easy.
Yeah, it sounds easy.
Yeah.
I'd even pose the same question you asked us earlier, right? Like, how is it that some people go through these situations and make it? Clint, there are marriages that don't survive what you and your wife have survived.
True.
For sure. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. It's
but I think, I honestly, Mike, that question's tough, man. I think like, if you just look at the scriptures, right. And I know I harp on this all the time, but I really feel like that word remember is so huge, and I'm not good at it. Right. I'm trying to figure that out, but I think that, we don't necessarily have to be in the throes of disaster to remember God. I think that we have to get better at remembering kind of what you pointed out, Clint, all of these little things that have happened. And I don't know how to do that in the right way. I think I'm trying on a regular basis, but I'm terrible at it, because it's like when we're in the middle of it, that's when we have the desire to turn, right? We know for somehow just built inside of us, we know that we need to turn to something bigger than us to get through it. But like I said, I step over miracles all the time because life is good, right? I don't, I'm doing fine right now. I don't need to think about that. Gosh, I wish I was better at that. I wish, Mike, I wish there was a good answer for that.
I think of David and Goliath, right? And that story seems to come up all the time on this podcast, but like, I think it's not necessarily, I think it's remembering the moments we have with God.
Right.
Like, I don't want to psychoanalyze Clint, but it's interesting that he was angry in Czechoslovakia, but it's almost like you remember that he helped you, right? And you carry that with you.
Right.
And when David is facing Goliath, he's like, yeah, I don't need the armor. Listen, I've done this before. It wasn't that big, but there were bears, right? There were things that I've had success with, and the victory was God's then. It'll be God's now. Let's go. And I think that really that when I think of remembering, I just want to remember what he's done for me. It'd be wonderful if I could remember 24/7 and walk around like, oh, yep, but being authentic, that's difficult.
For sure. Yeah.
But if I can remember when the enemy is in front of me, and I can remember that the battle is his and that he has helped me in the past and he will help me now, there we go.
Well, maybe that's part of that is, we just have to be like for me, right? Like I have to be intentional about finding the times of silence for me. Like that's important for me. Like the only way I'm gonna do that is sit with a pen in my hand and a notebook in front of me and have silence. So
Well,
I
like
can
you said, I got to be intentional about looking in the rearview mirror.
for sure, yeah.
I got to
yeah.
be intentional and looking back and say, what did he do for me today?
Yeah.
What has he done for me and my family? Right? Where have we come? And again, it's not a material progression thing. It's just am I learning? Am I better today than I was yesterday? Am I falling in the same hole, or am I avoiding the hole and fixing the hole so others don't fall in?
Well, yeah, and so Clint, I'm gonna reference one of my favorite things right now. It's this shout out to the Monk Manual, right? Because I'm burying myself.
The over under. We made it an hour and something without mentioning the Monk Manual. That's not bad.
But there in the daily on that, the question is, what am I grateful for? And there's 3 spots, right? And it's super easy for me to default into my wife, my kids, whatever, right? The basic things. But lately I've been staring at those spots and forcing myself to think outside of that. And man, I got to dig. Like there's times where I'm like, I'm a super blessed guy, but maybe I'm just a super selfish guy too, because I just look at those spots and I'm like, well, I'm just going to jot down my wife, my kids, and my friends. That's a good list. But I think, you know what I mean? I think if we really force ourselves to think about what it is that we're truly grateful for, or what it is that we've been blessed with, I think it's a different strategy. It's a different way to go about things.
Clint, as you look at the situations and the things that you and your family have gone through, would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't.
And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah,
I would not. That makes me think of something. So, you said that it just popped back into my mind. So, when this all happened, you can't, if there's no Gabe, I mean, would I choose to not have my son so I didn't go through this? No, obviously not. But, and I've talked to my wife about this, when my wife became pregnant with Eli, and Eli's about 6 years younger, not quite, than Gabe. So Gabe's, he was about 3. So right about the time he was finishing up his chemo and stuff is when we got pregnant with Eli. And I had a real fear that I wouldn't be able to connect or bond with Eli because I didn't want to open myself up to that. Because, if you risk losing a child, it's just a whole different level. And so I had a real fear of that. And I told my wife, I'm like, gosh, this is real hard. Now, it turned out it wasn't hard. He's my buddy and he's my son and we're good. But I had a real concern about that.
Yeah.
So in a little bit different way, no, I wouldn't change anything, but I definitely think that it changed the way that I viewed future decisions, like to have. And so, could I snap my fingers and make it so Gabe never had cancer? Gosh, yes, I don't want him to go through that. But that whole experience definitely shaped our whole family for sure. Can you change any one thing and have the same outcome? Because as far as I'm concerned, the outcome that we ended up with is perfect. My life is as close to perfect as it can get. I've got the beautiful wife. She's hardworking. I've got beautiful kids and they're all smart and they're funny. And I've got a beautiful home and I've got a business and I've got extended family and I've got good friends. I really can't complain about anything. People will sometimes, you put like, see on like social media posts or whatever, they'll be like, they'll put a list of things and like, take this pill and you can go back in time and do this, or you can go back and change this. Or I'm like, I wouldn't take any of those pills. My life is great. I don't have any reason to change it.
Clint, can you talk for a second about faith when you were growing up and what that looked like for you, kind of your journey of faith as a young man? I'm curious about
Absolutely.
leading up to your time, your decision to serve a mission.
It's a good thing that you brought that up, because actually that's something that I had thought about. So kind of my faith journey, real cursory. My mom, my two aunts, and my grandmother got baptized when my mom was about 12. And that's kind of where my history in the church starts. They were never particularly active though, but that's where it started. My first memories of ever going to church were in Houston when we were dirt poor, and the government, the church helped us a lot with welfare. I was in some church foster care as well as state. So that's kind of where my faith journey kind of starts. But I don't think I actually built anything there. I didn't really feel like I belonged. Then my mom met my stepdad. He's Catholic. Has never heard about the church. They moved up at the time. I had moved my mom had sent my sister and I to live with my grandmother in Northern California. And we were up there for a while. And then my stepdad and my mom moved to Kansas City. And she sent for us, and we came. And sometime in there, when I was about 9-10 years old, the missionaries actually tracked it into our home. And my mom's like, I'm already a member. And my stepdad agreed to take the lessons. And we actually moved in the middle of these lessons, but the missionaries, they found us again. And so I was baptized when I was 10 with my stepdad. We were baptized on the same day. And he took to it. He took to the gospel. He is a strong member, much stronger than my mom, to be honest with you. My mom is a strong member too, but she's a little more private. But he is 100%. So once he decided to do it, he did it. So he was an example for me. But probably the two people that were most important when I was young was Ben Bond. He's a good friend of mine. I grew up with him. I met him when I was about 10, my first day at church. And we hit it off the whole time. He was always an example. He gave me someone to be with, someone to belong, and I had some good church leaders during those probably 15 to 18-year-old years. We had some really good leaders who were really youth invested that we didn't have before. And then the other thing was a girlfriend I had at the time. And she moved into the ward when I was about 16 or so. And she just changed the way I saw everything, because there weren't any girls there that were church girls that I'd ever dated or had anything to do with. And she was just a different level of spirituality. And so I ended up going to a bunch of stuff with her that I never would go to before. I'd go to seminary every morning. I'd go to church, but I was never really into a lot of things. I didn't do anything extra. But she kind of brought a lot of that at him. And I think the combination of those youth leaders, my best friend, who was a good example, he was going to go on a mission, and this girl, Heather, they all kind of formed a desire in me to kind of test the waters. I can't say when I went on my mission that I had a particularly strong testimony. I can't even say I developed a particularly strong testimony on my mission. It was something that I had to get through. But they gave me the faith to try it, to put myself out there. And then you talk about being a grinder, and that's part of it. Once I commit to something, like with my practice, I said earlier, once I'm going to do it, or I'm going to write it into the ground. Right. That's so once I was there, I was invested. But I think I don't have an aha moment, but it's those three people, two people and then a group of some church leaders, of some youth leaders.
Well, I
led me to mission. And then, without my mission, I wouldn't have married my wife.
I love that, Clint, because I think it's important to understand that maybe the aha moment doesn't have to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to have this clap of thunder. Do you know? I think that much like stopping the car and looking in the rearview mirror and examining the miracles that have happened in life, I think faith for me is that way as well. I mean, I've had some powerful experiences, especially later in my life, post mission. But I think that when I stop the car and I look back on the faith journey, I can see some things. And I think that what you describe, your best friend, girlfriend, church leaders, I mean, I think that those are key components, and I wanted to point that out because I think it's important, because I think that sometimes people think if without a clap of thunder that they don't have the faith to be involved or to embrace it. Right. And I think that it's important to just understand that, I tell people all the time, they'll ask me to describe my faith or my testimony. And I'll tell people, well, it's Ricky Gould. It's Mike Freeman. It's Clint Watkins. It's made up of all of these individuals that have shaped, pushed, nudged, challenged, whatever else, right? That put me in a place where I go, oh yeah, you know what? There's something bigger than me. And there's some, there's something out there that's different. And so I appreciate that sort of perspective that we don't have to have the pillar of light, so to speak. Nothing wrong with that. If you've had it, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, Tyler, as I'm hearing you, and the purpose of getting together with Clint and talking to guys like Clint and having this little project that we're on is to try to be of influence and impact. And when I hear Clint talk about that, I think belong.
Yeah.
How can I help people feel like they belong? Because in the end, we're all awkward 7th graders walking into a school cafeteria wondering who we're going to sit with.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man, I said flashbacks, dude.
Yeah. Can we extend a hand? Right? Can we be there with them in their low moment? Can we celebrate when they're up? But can we just say, and then even better, can we create it that it is in rejoicing in all things that Jesus Christ has done with us, that he's done for us, right? You connect and combine, you create a culture of belonging in a culture of Christ, you're going to make an impact on people.
For sure.
That is an excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah.
And I love that, because it is like Tyler was saying, and Clint, it's like Ben and Heather and some leaders. It's a mosaic.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But the beautiful thing about it is orchestrated and there are no accidents.
Yeah.
Clint, I don't know how this works. You open up a letter that says, go to Czechoslovakia. You go to Czechoslovakia, and then you and your makeup and your experience go to leaders and say, hey, is there another way? And then that other way leads you to Ohio. And then you're struggling in Ohio and you say, hey, is there another way? And you meet Tyler Gould, right? Orchestrated moments where we meet people that nudge us and make us who we are. So love
Absolutely.
it. I don't understand it. I don't know how it works out.
But it does, right?
But I love it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Because it does. It does work out. But speaking of this, you could be in deep trouble, Clint, if you didn't talk about how you met your wife.
I was you're reading my mind. I was going to say
So
before we run out of time.
Let's go there. We
kinda skipped over that.
feel the significance that she has had in your journey. I'm curious how this orchestrated universe brought the two of you together. So,
absolutely. First of all, I Tyler probably remembers, but I used to give him a hard time and used to say, missionaries who went home and got married within a year were losers and all this stuff. And I ended up being that person, right?
I think I was too. So, you know,
so my wife, actually, I've known her since I was about 10. So, she grew up in the same ward. But she is 4 years younger than me. So she was the age of my younger sister, and 4 years at that age is a lot.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have anything to do with her. I really didn't know her. I knew who she was. When I got back from my mission, all of a sudden there's this girl there, and I was smitten. And I was when I got called as a youth advisor. I think I was second counselor, I think, in the young men's or something pretty standard mission post mission. So I was going to these youth activities and stuff, and there's this girl there, and I'm like, who's this girl? And she and that's just kind of how it started. Started talking to her a little bit, and then we went out on a few dates, and everything was going good. And why it kind of went faster than what it should have probably is I was going to go to college at a college north of in the north part of the state, and she was going to go to college in this college way south. And it just didn't feel right to me. You know, I thought this could be the one. And so we really started talking, and we just went for it. And, you know, we only really dated for about 3 months. I mean, really dated. Now, I've known her off and on.
Guys, man. Holy
cow.
cow.
I'm a loser, I know. So, but that was 24 years ago, this year, right? So I think that it was just meant to be. She is, again, I told you a little bit about her. She comes from a big family. She's the second oldest. Just hardworking people. And she keeps me level. She is, she doesn't get too high or too low. I don't either, really. I'm pretty good. So I think we're a good match there. She's a great mom, super hard worker, very smart. And so she is my rock right now when it comes to faith. She has the ability to believe, and it's amazing, and it's a gift that I envy. And she doesn't understand how much I really envy that in her. Faith is hard for everybody, but she's a rock. And even when I'm like, I don't really want to do that, she's the one who, and I'm not ashamed to say it, she's the one who will lead scripture study or family prayer and stuff. She's the one who does it. And I feel bad about that occasionally, but that's her thing. She is in it, and she keeps me in the moment and keeps me thinking about God, even when times when I don't. So yeah, Elena is my rock for sure. But yeah, I was a loser. I got engaged 3 months in, got married. Didn't make it quite a year.
It sounds like it was for good reason anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll give you that, man. Hey,
well, I love the believing heart. I think that you nailed it. I mean, that is a gift. And I think everybody has different gifts, and everyone, gifts of the Spirit look different and they feel different. And I appreciate you acknowledging that and seeing that, because I think that one gets overlooked a lot.
Yeah.
Can you talk for a second about what faith looks like, your faith journey looks like today for you?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's changed even just in the past month or so since you asked me to do this, because I really got introspective. Some of the stuff that we've talked about today, some of these connections, like when Gabe was sick and all of the steps that it took to be able to ask the right questions and to be in the right place at the right time, to live in the right place. So we lived close by a hospital, to have a mom who works there at that particular hospital, to have my brother and my sister-in-law work at a hospital in California where they're treatment. All of these things all kind of added up. And I have trouble seeing, and I one time on the Facebook page, I asked that, how do you see God? How do you, and I think that's where I am right now. I mean, I have trouble with faith. I really do. I fall into my own understanding probably a little bit too much. I don't tempt God. I'm careful about that, but I'm always kind of nudging, like, give me some kind of a sign, but I don't really want a sign because I don't know what that might be. Right. So, but I'm getting there. It's a journey. I can't tell you right now that if you ask me to bear a testimony, I don't know, I could bear you an honest testimony that you would think of as a testimony. I can bear you a testimony that I want to believe, that I have a desire. I can bear you a testimony that I think if I look back, I can see God in my life, right? And this has really helped me with this. So thank you guys for offering this. I think it's something that I'm building. I think that would be the one word I would say for my faith journey right now would just be building. I'm just trying to build it.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I want to, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like, Lord, help thou mine unbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of an exchange we had a while back. So I'm over here in California. Northern California has been ravaged the last couple summers by wildfires. Mm-hmm. And sadly, we are already talking about wildfires here in April, right? But I'm sitting with the stake president who's counseling a couple who lost everything this last summer. Lost everything, right? And generational type property gone. And she's talking about enduring. And she's talking about not quitting. And she has no option, right, but to move forward and to keep putting one foot in front of the other. She's not bearing that testimony, right? But she's talking about how she's moving forward and enduring these things. And he says, thank you for that testimony, sister. And the woman says, is that my testimony? And he's like, absolutely. That's your testimony. That you, in the face of all of this, you continue, right? In the face of all of this, you move forward and you press on. And I love that. But Clint, I got to tell you, we are talking to people in various stages, and some people are up and some people are down.
But
if they could hear from Clint when they're down, and we might have somebody who's done, like you said to Elder K so many years ago.
Yeah, I'm done. Yep.
What do you say to that person right now? You might be in their ear right now. What would you say to them?
I just kind of what we started with. Find a different way. Ask. Don't expect that way to be given to you. Think about it. Try to come up with a plan, and then seek out those people who can help you with that plan. That's what I mean, it's not simple. I guess that sounds trite, but it's not. It's come up with a plan and find the people who can help you do that.
Oh, don't expect it to be given to you. I think of Brother Jared, right?
Yeah.
The Lord says, what is it that you want me to do?
Right. Well, I got rocks.
What do you bring into this? What do you bring into this?
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just like, help, he's probably saying, hey, what's your part in this?
And I think it's important that we acknowledge too that we're all in a stage of building, right? Yeah. And I think and sometimes the perception is when we walk in a room full of faithful members of a congregation, sometimes the feeling is everybody in here could go outside and tell that mountain to move and it would move, but I couldn't do that, right? Because I'm not there.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're all in that space trying to build that faith to get us where we want to be. Right.
Absolutely.
So I think I love that thought.
Well, can we go there really quick? Like, I'm just thinking as you think about that, I'm flipping through some pages here, but I'm going to like Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 10. 2 men went into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican, right? This guy next to me. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. And Christ says, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Right? Like, that's the perspective. We want to be able to say, I'm building, man, I'm trying. Help me where I'm falling. Right? I want to, versus, hey, look at me. It's kind of like when your kids were little, every time my kid would say, hey, look at me, bad stuff was going to happen.
And that's when you wanted to tune in, man. You tuned right into that.
Hey, Dad, watch this. Uh-oh. Get the camera. I'm going to win $10,000. All right. So, hey, Clint, we've been at this for a little bit, and I've been dying to ask this question to you.
Yeah.
You know, on the Richest Men in Town, we ask questions of the soul, questions of an eternal nature. Dogs or cats, man?
Dogs or cats? I'm more of a dog guy.
Yeah.
I'll admit. More of a dog guy.
And that's official. That's from a vet.
Yeah.
I have cats. I have one cat, one dog. I technically own a bunch more cats at the clinic, but yeah, I'm more of a.
Let's be real.
dog guy.
Let's be real. No one owns a cat.
Yeah, it's true. True.
You could drop off the planet. That cat will be fine.
Yeah, it would be.
That dog will be
tell
sitting
people
at
that
the
all the
door.
time. People always tell me that their cat loves them. I say, if your cat weighed a little bit more, it would eat you. That's a fact.
That's so funny, dude. It's like, pandemic time, right? Like, cats are like, what is this guy still doing at the house? Dogs are stoked. They're like, finally.
Exactly.
That's funny, man.
No,
Clint,
so seriously.
go ahead. Yeah.
So seriously, we pattern this work after chasing that elusive life that George Bailey discovered, right? George Bailey goes through some adversity and he's at a low place, and he realizes he had it pretty good. He realizes that he wants to live that life. Be curious to know what the sequel would look like, right? When he gets to go back. But
yeah,
we have had an amazing glimpse into your life, Clint, and I feel like my heart's tied to yours, and we've never met. I don't understand it. I don't know how that works, but when the battle cry goes out, I'll fight with you, man. And you've taught me some things that are going to help me be a better Mike Freeman here over on this neck of my woods. So, at the end of that movie, Harry Bailey comes home. Harry Bailey's a war hero. George Bailey's kind of a wreck. And Harry Bailey raises a glass and toasts his big brother George as the richest man in town. Clint Watkins, what does it mean to you to be the richest man in town?
I think kind of the life that I'm leading, like I told you guys earlier, and I absolutely mean it. My life is perfect. My children being healthy, my wife being happy, our marriage being stable. That's the richest man in town. I mean, we've had nothing. I've really had nothing when I was younger. My wife and I both had nothing when we went.
Love that.
Clint, I'm glad you did this. It only took a good year to convince you to do this. And, you're a holdout. You always have been. And I appreciate that about you. And I am grateful though, for our time tonight, man. It's a highlight for me to spend some time with you.
Same, brother.
Yeah.
Same. We've been through a lot.
We have 7 months in Newark, man. That'll do it. But
it'll do it to anybody.
That'll tie anybody together. But I love you. I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for what you've taught tonight, and what I'm hoping our listeners will take away from spending a couple hours with you. So thanks a ton, Clint. Thank
you, guys. Thanks. And like I said, I was a holdout. I didn't really know what I wanted to offer, but I think really it's been really beneficial for me to really think about what I was going to say and think about some of those things. And I thank you guys for that, for giving me that opportunity.
Well, you keep going, brother. You keep going and you keep doing those great things, and do your Dr. Doolittle stuff, and talk to the animals, and whisper to the horses, and do whatever you gotta do.
Thank you.
We wish you the best of luck in all of that, and that your family is healthy and well. And it has been a wonderful time tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, tell Linda thanks for sacrificing her time with you, man. We'll circle back again one of these days.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, guys.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.